does an economy grow? Our goal for this lesson is to identify the 5 components for economic growth. Look at your vocabulary words. An advantage for oneself, a benefit or gain, a real help, is a boon. More than money, available resources to run a business such as factories, real estate, equipment, and tools is capital. A system of financial activity in a country or settlement is an economy. A new process or creation as the product of human study and experimentation is an invention. All people in a nation who are working or are seeking work is the labor force. Available God-given assets for living or running a business are natural resources. Natural elements or substances from which goods may be made are raw materials. Careful study and review is research. A measure of the affordability of the goods and services that are available to a consumer of a nation is a standard of living. The type of inventions and research that science and business provide is technology. Okay, we'll put you in charge. Let's make up a fictional setting. What if you were alive at the birth of our nation and the American government appointed you to a newly made post, the President of the Economic Department for America, EDA. You're the President of the EDA. You would make the decisions to make the economy grow in our country. What basics would you need to know in order to get things up and running? You want the nation to have the best standard of living of any country in the world. What steps would you take? Let's take this fictional scenario and use it to learn about the necessary steps to make an economy grow. Okay. You're probably going to need a new piece of paper today, or a page that has a lot of room on it. I want your dates. We're going to make a web today. Okay. Economy. We'll put economy growth. First, look at your natural resources. So the first thing we know is we're going to need resources. To make our economy grow, we need resources. You have some great natural resources here in this country. Rich southern soil, abundant water sources, and healthy mineral supplies. Will you designate farming areas in Maryland and Georgia? Will you order a logging industry to take advantage of the forests in Pennsylvania? Doing so is using the natural resources of the country. Natural resources are all lands and raw materials available within your country's borders. So resources are all lands and all raw materials. Okay, so the first thing we need for our economy to grow is we need resources. The next thing we need is capital. Capital. Many people think capital is just money, but it's more than that. It means equipment and tools. It means factories and supplies. Remember, as president of EDA, you must make wise decisions to increase capital. Perhaps you would build a factory in Baltimore to process fish caught in the Chesapeake Bay. Maybe off the coast of North Carolina, you could organize a shipbuilding business. There could be a plow-making business in Philadelphia and a tool supply depot in Washington. All of these constitute capital. So capital is money. It's equipment, schools, factories, and supply. Supplies. Okay, so we have our resources, we have our capital. Next, we need a labor force. Okay, so let's talk about the labor force. You will need to use your labor force wisely. Your labor force is all people in your nation who are working or seeking work. So your labor force is the people. It is important to factor in their education, skills, and experience. It would not make sense to force a farmer to work in a surgical position, nor would it be wise to make a college professor sweep streets. A wisely used active labor force is a boon to an economy. History tells us in the last century, the Russian government ran the Mennonite farmers out of their country. The Tsar insisted that all men take up arms for warfare, and the peace-loving Mennonites wouldn't, so they were expelled. Most of those farmers came to America, and in the 1890s bought land at a good price from Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad along the rail line. The Mennonite farmers resumed planting red wheat, a special crop they had the skill to produce abundantly. The Mennonite farmers have continued to grow enormous crops of red wheat in the United States, while Russia still suffers to this day with an inability to produce a good harvest. America even sends wheat to Russia, some grown by the descendants of the very labor force they expelled many years ago. Okay? So we have the resources, we have the capital, we have the labor force. Now we're going to need technology. So let's talk about technology. Fourth, see what technology is available. Technology means the type of inventions and research that science and business provide. Okay. So technology is going to involve research and inventions. There may be another country that can grow twice as much corn as America. Or perhaps you have the technology to store corn for twice as long without rotting. That technology could help you in your economic decisions. Technology is important because each door of learning opens doors to new opportunities for growth. For instance, rubber was in use in different ways for decades. But when Charles Goodyear learned the process of vulcanizing rubber, which gave it great strength and durability, the rubber industry exploded in America. So how do you think you would have done as president of the EDA? Although this was a fictional exercise, many real-life challenges are faced each day by the economic boards of countries across the world. They must confront the same 4 points that you have just studied. Wait, there is one more. Okay. The other one we're going to have to talk about is inflation. Inflation. As your country grows, you will have to deal with a common economic problem, inflation. Even though all of these are positive, even though all these are positive components, inflation is probably the one negative, but we still need to talk about it. You just printed up your nation's money, but now you see that it is losing value by the week. Inflation is an economic condition in which the money supply is increasing faster than the supply of goods and services. Too much money is purchasing too few goods. You have barrels of dollars, but hardly anything has been growing on your farms, and the ships have not been bringing goods from other countries. Remember that money is a means of exchange, so money itself is subject to the law of supply and demand. When the supply exceeds the demand, the price or value of money declines. In other words, if you have more bread than your country could ever use, the price of a loaf may drop from 87 cents a loaf down to 40 cents, because everyone has more than they need. The value of a unit of money increases as it is able to purchase more goods and services. It decreases as it is able to purchase fewer goods. The result of inflation is a rise in the general price level. The more money the government creates without a commensurate increase in production, the higher the price level will be, and the fewer goods money will be able to purchase. Okay, so inflation, remember, we talked about it. It's when the purchasing power decreases on a continual basis. How does inflation affect businesses? In the first place, it hurts all creditors, but it helps debtors. If Joe owes $100 to Arnie, inflation will help Joe, since his $100 in May, at the time he signed the contract, is now worth only $79 in December. It's still $100, but it's worth less. The creditor is paid back according to the contract, yet the money a creditor receives in payment of the contract may be worth less in terms of the purchasing power when he receives it than it was at the time the contract was made. The price of the goods bought under the contract has been, in effect, decreased because of inflation. Another force of inflation is that labor tends to want wage increases to compensate for higher consumer prices. Phillips Cereal Company employees feel their wages can't buy enough food for their families, so they threaten to strike unless the owners increase their pay to an extra $1 an hour. These wage increases, however, contribute to higher consumer prices on down the line. Since all the businesses in your country have received more pay per hour, the companies have added an extra 2% cost on the price of rice, beans, honey, and milk. This situation is called the wage price spiral. Also, when a contraction in price occurs, union wages do not go down. They are set by contract. Some employees might have to be laid off. Unemployment results. Inflation leads to uncertainty and confusion about prices. It interferes with planning for the future. If a firm wants to build a building, what the building will actually cost is difficult to know. Will it still cost $1 million to build, or will the final cost of this building end up being $3 million? Inflation can change the picture so much between the time the building is planned and when it is built that a business might need to rethink its plans completely. A number of sports stadiums across the United States have started off with a projected cost which was much less than the final cost upon completion of the building. Okay, so our 5 components for economic growth, we have to consider our resources, all lands and raw materials. We have to consider our capital, that's the money, the equipment, tools, factories, and supplies. Our labor force, which is the people. When we remember, we need to consider their educational levels, put them where they belong. We need to consider our technology, our research, our inventions, and we also need to take in consideration the amount of inflation. Go ahead and study that lesson, answer those questions, and turn in your notes.